Hi there. Welcome back to Forsaken Joe, where real stories cut deeper than fiction. Buckle up, because this one still feels like a slow-motion car crash every time I replay it in my head. It all started with a single casual sentence that wasn't meant for the world to hear. Or maybe it was. We were at her corporate event, a place filled with fake smiles, clinking glasses, and conversations so shallow you could drown from boredom. I was already counting the minutes until I could go home. But then she said it. Evelyn, my wife, dropped a line that made the entire room freeze like someone had just smashed a champagne glass on the floor. "You'd be a better husband than mine." You could hear the collective inhale of 50 strangers. The background music might as well have stopped. My ears were ringing. It was like my brain refused to process what I'd just heard. I turned to her, expecting it to be a joke, but she didn't even look at me. She was smiling at that guy from her office as if I didn't exist. I swear in that moment, I wasn't a husband. I was a prop in her performance, something to laugh at. I walked out, not because I wanted to be dramatic, but because I couldn't trust my own face not to crack open and show everything I was feeling. And as I pushed through the crowd, I heard the whispers follow me, like a trail of broken glass behind my shoes. People pretending not to stare, pretending not to see a marriage come undone in the middle of their Friday night drinks. Now, sitting here writing this, I can't stop replaying every second of it. Did she mean it? Was it some drunken attempt at humor? Or was it her way of saying what she's been hiding for months? I feel like my own house has turned into a stranger's home. Every corner whispers secrets I don't want to hear. After I stormed out of that room, I sat in my car for nearly 20 minutes, staring at the dashboard, trying to decide whether I should go back in, confront her, or just drive off and never look back. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pull my keys out of my pocket. The sentence kept replaying in my head, not just the words, but the tone, light, teasing, almost flirtatious. It wasn't an innocent slip. It felt like something she meant, something she wanted me to hear, like a knife slipped between my ribs just to see if I'd bleed. When Evelyn finally came outside, she didn't look guilty. She didn't even look surprised to see me there. She gave me that practiced too-perfect smile and said, "Oh, come on, Howard. It was just a joke. Don't be so sensitive." That's the thing about her. She has this way of making me feel like I'm the crazy one, like my feelings are overreactions instead of warnings. I mumbled something, but I couldn't even look her in the eye. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing her leaning toward that guy, Brandon, I think his name was, with her hand lightly brushing his sleeve, like I wasn't even in the room. I started thinking about all the late nights at the office, all the vague team dinners she'd mentioned in passing, and I realized how little I actually knew about what she was doing when she wasn't home. The next morning, I woke up before her and started looking through her phone. Yeah, I know, it's not something a healthy husband should do, but something inside me snapped. I couldn't sit there and pretend everything was fine anymore. Most of her messages were work-related, but then I found a thread with someone saved as B, not Brandon. Just B. The messages weren't overtly romantic, but there was something about them. Inside jokes, late-night texts, her calling him hero for helping her with some project, that made my chest feel tight. When she finally woke up, I acted like nothing was wrong. I made coffee, asked about her day, and smiled like I wasn't falling apart inside. But I've already decided something. I'm going to dig deeper. I need to know if that one sentence was just the tip of the iceberg, or if my whole marriage is built on lies. I spent the entire day pretending to work while my mind was trapped in a loop, running that moment from the corporate party like a cursed movie clip I couldn't shut off. Every time I saw her face in my memory, smiling at him, not me, I felt something crumble a little deeper inside. By the time I came home, I'd already made up my mind. I couldn't keep playing the clueless husband. If Evelyn was hiding something, I needed to see it for myself. The house felt colder that night. Maybe it was me. Maybe I was looking at everything differently. The pictures on the walls of us smiling like we were still in love. The wedding photo where I'm holding her hand like she's the only thing in the world that matters. Now it all looked like evidence from a crime scene. She was upstairs taking a long shower, humming to herself like everything was perfectly fine. That humming drove me insane because I wanted her to be nervous, to feel as shaken as I did. I took her laptop. I told myself it was just to calm my paranoia. But the second I opened her browser, I knew I wasn't paranoid. The tabs alone were suspicious. Private windows, recently cleared history. Who clears their browser history every day? My hands were sweating as I searched through the folders on her desktop, hoping to find nothing, but secretly knowing I'd find something, and I did. A hidden folder buried deep under random work files. Inside were dozens of photos, not of us, not of family, but of company events where she looked different. In every single one, she wasn't the Evelyn I knew. She was brighter, bolder, leaning into conversations with the same guy I saw at the party. Brandon, the guy she said would make a better husband than me. In one photo, his hand was on her lower back, and she wasn't pulling away. She was smiling, like she liked it. I sat there staring at that image for so long, I didn't even hear her coming downstairs. When she saw me holding her laptop, her face changed. Just for a second, like a flicker of fear. But then she smiled that same infuriating smile and asked, "What are you doing?" I couldn't answer. I just closed the laptop and walked past her. I knew if I opened my mouth, I'd say something I couldn't take back. That night, I lay awake beside her, listening to her breathing while my mind screamed. I realized I didn't even know the person lying next to me anymore. I felt like I was married to a stranger who wore my wife's face. I knew I had to go further, no matter how much it hurt. By the time the next week rolled around, I felt like my skin didn't fit me anymore. Every conversation with Evelyn was a performance. Every smile she gave me felt like a lie I was expected to accept. I started noticing the way she checked her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, the way she'd type something quickly and then lock the screen like the device itself might betray her. I kept telling myself I was overthinking it, but I wasn't. That sentence from the party, "You'd be a better husband than mine," had burned a hole in my brain that nothing could fill. So, I made a decision that I never thought I'd make. I was going to follow her. It was Thursday night when she mentioned she had a late meeting with her team. The word team sounded rehearsed, like she'd planned the excuse before she even opened her mouth. I played it cool, nodding, pretending to be the supportive husband, but the second she left, I grabbed my jacket and keys. I waited a few minutes so she wouldn't suspect anything, then drove after her, headlights off until I hit the main road. I felt ridiculous, like some character in a bad thriller movie, but my gut told me this was the only way I'd ever get the truth. She didn't go to her office. Instead, she drove across town to a place I didn't recognize. A quiet street lined with bars and little boutique shops, the kind of place you'd go for a date, not a business meeting. I parked a few cars back and watched as she got out of her car. I was half expecting to see Brandon, and sure enough, there he was, waiting for her under the dim glow of a street lamp. He wasn't dressed like someone meeting a colleague, no briefcase, no tie, just casual clothes and that smug grin I already hated. I can't explain what it felt like watching her walk up to him. It wasn't just that they hugged, it was the way she hugged him, like she'd been missing him, like that embrace belonged to someone who mattered more than me. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard, I thought I might snap it in half. Every part of me wanted to get out, walk over there, and ask her what the hell was going on. But I couldn't. I just couldn't. They went into this quiet, candlelit wine bar, and I sat there in my car sweating, my heart pounding like I'd run a marathon. I told myself I'd wait 10 minutes, that maybe they'd talk business, and I'd realize I was wrong. 10 minutes turned into 30, and then an hour. Through the window I could see them sitting close, talking quietly, her hand occasionally brushing his. She laughed. That same laugh I used to think was mine. I stayed there until they finally left, close to midnight. They didn't kiss, not in front of the bar, but the way they looked at each other, it was worse than kissing. It was like they had some secret language I'd never understand. I drove home that night with my stomach in knots, every mile feeling heavier than the last. When she came home later, she smelled faintly of wine and perfume. She kissed my cheek and said, "Sorry, the meeting ran late." I smiled and said nothing, but inside, something had broken. The morning after I followed her, I couldn't look Evelyn in the eye. I pretended to be sick just to avoid sitting across from her at breakfast, watching her casually scroll through her phone as if nothing in the world was wrong. It was strange. There she was, humming while making coffee, wearing one of my shirts like she used to, and all I could see was her leaning across that candlelit table, smiling at him like I was a ghost. I couldn't keep living in this fog of half-truths and suspicions. I needed proof, something undeniable, something that would rip away all the maybe I'm imagining it thoughts that had been clawing at me since that corporate event. I started small. I checked our shared bank account for any odd expenses, and sure enough, there were payments I didn't recognize. Little boutique restaurants, wine bars, and even a hotel charge. When I asked her about the hotel one casually, she laughed, saying her company sometimes books hotel rooms when they work late during all-hands events. I wanted to believe her, I really did. But my gut told me that was a lie, the kind that comes too easily when someone's done it before. Then I did something I swore I'd never do. I installed a small, cheap GPS tracker on her car. It felt wrong, like I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross, but my need to know the truth was louder than my guilt. The first few days, nothing happened, just her usual routes to work, the grocery store, and home. I almost convinced myself I'd gone insane, that I was just a jealous, insecure husband who couldn't handle his wife's success and independence. But then Thursday came. She told me she had another team dinner. The moment I saw her location pop up on the tracker, I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't a restaurant, it wasn't her office. It was the same boutique hotel where that charge had appeared on our bank account. I sat there in my living room, staring at the blinking dot on my phone, feeling like I was being electrocuted from the inside out. My first instinct was to drive there, to catch her in the act, but some twisted part of me wanted to see just how deep this rabbit hole went. So, I waited. And while I waited, I went through her laptop again. That's when I found an email thread between her and Brandon. It wasn't outright romantic, but it was dripping with something worse, intimacy. He called her Eve, a nickname only I used to use. She wrote things like, "I can't stop thinking about what you said last night," and "Being around you makes me feel alive." I couldn't breathe as I read those words. I felt like my chest had collapsed. That was my wife, my Eve, talking to another man like I didn't even exist. By midnight, she still wasn't home. I drove to that hotel. I didn't have a plan. I just drove like a man possessed. When I parked across the street, I saw her car in the lot. I sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel, my breath fogging up the glass. Part of me wanted to march in there and find their room. Another part of me just froze. I wasn't sure if I could handle what I might see. In the end, I did nothing. I just drove home and waited for her like a coward. When she finally stumbled in around 1 a.m., she smelled like someone else's cologne, not mine. She mumbled something about a team debrief running late and kissed me goodnight, like nothing had happened. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was living someone else's life. I knew I had to make a choice, keep pretending or confront her. But I also knew that if I confronted her now, I'd do it without enough evidence and she'd twist it all back on me. Evelyn was always good at that. Too good. So I made a decision. I'd get undeniable proof, even if it killed me. By the time the weekend rolled around, my nerves were shot. I couldn't keep walking around this house, pretending everything was normal, while Evelyn played me for a fool. I felt like a ghost in my own marriage, present but invisible. Every time she smiled at me, I wondered if she was thinking about him. Every time she touched me, I wondered if she was comparing me to him. It was like living with a stranger who spoke the same language but meant something entirely different with every word. So I decided I couldn't wait for the truth to reveal itself. I had to dig it out, even if it cut my hands to pieces. On Saturday morning, I told Evelyn I had to work late. I could see the relief flash across her face, quick but undeniable, like she was already making other plans. That was my first confirmation. She didn't argue, didn't look disappointed. She just nodded, kissed me on the cheek and said, "Don't stay too late." My gut twisted. The game was on. I parked my car 2 blocks from our house that night, close enough to watch, but far enough to stay hidden. I felt like an absolute lunatic, crouched down in my own neighborhood, like some detective in a cheap TV show. Hours passed, and just when I was starting to think I'd miscalculated, I saw her. Evelyn, my wife, dressed in a black dress I hadn't seen in months, slipping out the front door like a teenager sneaking out of her parents' house. My heart started pounding so loud, I swear I could hear it echoing in my skull. She didn't know I was watching. She didn't know I'd already installed a tiny recording device under the passenger seat of her car. I followed her. The GPS led me downtown, but this time she didn't stop at a bar or restaurant. No, this time she went somewhere worse. She parked on a quiet street near the same boutique hotel. I watched from across the road as Brandon's car pulled up seconds later. The sight of him getting out, walking over to her with that easy confidence, made me clench my fists until my nails dug into my palms. I didn't see them kiss, but I didn't need to. The way they looked at each other, it was enough. I couldn't follow them inside without making a scene, so I waited. I waited for hours, the tension in my chest like a steel cable ready to snap. Around midnight, I drove home, my brain buzzing with rage, dread, and something else I didn't want to name. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I retrieved the recorder from her car. My hands were shaking as I plugged it into my laptop. At first, it was just boring small talk, music, traffic sounds, but then I heard her voice. The way she laughed with him was different, softer, real. And then he said, "You know you don't have to keep lying to him, right?" My stomach turned. Her response was a whisper, but I caught every syllable. Not yet. I'm not ready to blow it up. I just sat there, frozen, listening to the woman I married plot out the end of our life together with another man. The recorder kept going, catching fragments of conversations about the right time and making it official. I couldn't listen to all of it. I felt like my soul was peeling away with every word. I yanked the device out and shoved it into a drawer, but the words stayed in my head, like they were carved there. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't say a single word. Instead, I started planning. If she was going to destroy me, I wasn't going to sit here and let it happen. I was going to get everything, every shred of truth, every piece of proof, until there was no denying what she was doing. But deep down, I started to fear something even worse than cheating. Something about the way she said, "not yet," made me think this wasn't just about another man. There was something bigger brewing, something I didn't understand yet, and I was going to find out, even if it burned me alive. By Monday, I felt like I was living in some distorted alternate reality, where every smile was fake and every word was a trap. Evelyn went through the motions of our routine, kissing me goodbye, asking if I needed anything from the store, even sending me the occasional "love you" text during the day. But now, every interaction between us felt rehearsed, like a script she was reading from memory. I couldn't stop thinking about those recordings. The way she whispered to Brandon, the words "not yet," like they were waiting for some perfect moment to blow my life to pieces. I kept replaying them in my head, over and over, until they became like static. I couldn't just sit around anymore. So I started digging deeper, not just into Evelyn, but into Brandon. I spent hours scrolling through his social media, trying to piece together who he really was. That's when I noticed something that didn't make sense. He wasn't just a colleague. He wasn't just some guy she flirted with at parties. He was always in the background of her life, tagged in photos I didn't know she had, invited to events she never mentioned. It was like he'd been orbiting her world for months, maybe years, waiting for the right moment to step in. And then I found the photo that made my stomach drop. A picture of Evelyn and Brandon from last summer, standing way too close, taken at what she told me was a team-building retreat. She never told me he was there. That night, while Evelyn was out running errands, I decided to check the second voice recorder I'd hidden in her car. The first one was brutal enough, but I had to know more. I had to know everything. The new recording started with casual small talk between them, but then I heard something that made my blood run cold. Brandon said, "So, do you think he's figured it out yet?" Evelyn laughed softly and replied, "Howard, number? He's too naive. He trusts me too much." That laugh wasn't the laugh of my wife. It was colder, sharper, like someone I'd never met before. And then she said something I'll never forget. "By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late." What the hell did that mean? Too late for what? Was this just about an affair? Or was there something bigger? Something I couldn't see? My head started spinning with possibilities. Money? Divorce? Was she setting me up for something? I started digging through our financial records again, and that's when I found the second blow. She had opened a separate account under her name, one I knew nothing about, and she'd been moving money into it for months. Thousands of dollars quietly disappearing from what I thought was our life. I barely slept that night. I just lay there in the dark, listening to her breathing, wondering who the hell this woman was. I wanted to confront her, but my gut told me not to, not yet. If she was plotting something, I needed to know exactly what it was before I made a move. And so, I made a plan. A real plan this time. I wasn't just going to follow her or check her phone. I was going to trap her, catch her in a way that even she couldn't talk her way out of. I called in sick to work and spent the entire day setting things up. I bought a hidden camera, installed tracking software on her laptop, and even set up an alert system for that secret bank account. I felt like I was losing my mind, but every time I thought about her voice on that recording, mocking me, I got sharper, more determined. That night, I finally saw her true colors again. She slipped out of the house after dinner, claiming she had to pick something up from the office. I tracked her car from my phone, following slowly, my hands tight on the wheel. This time, she didn't go to the hotel or a bar. She went somewhere else entirely, an upscale apartment complex I didn't recognize. I parked a block away and waited, watching as she walked inside with her phone pressed to her ear, laughing at something Brandon said. I don't know how long I sat there, but when she came back out an hour later, she wasn't alone. Brandon was with her, carrying a small suitcase. A suitcase. My stomach turned. What the hell was she doing with him? And why did they look so calm, so comfortable, like this wasn't the first time? When she saw his car pull up, she leaned in close, whispered something to him, and then they drove off in separate directions. I followed her home, but my mind was no longer just on her betrayal. Something about that suitcase, about the look on her face, made me realize this wasn't just about cheating. This was something bigger, something I didn't understand yet, but I was going to. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My mind was a storm of accusations and worst-case scenarios. Every creak of the house sounded like betrayal. Every glance Evelyn gave me seemed like it hid 1,000 secrets. By the next morning, I'd made up my mind. I was going to confront her. No more waiting. No more pretending I didn't see what was right in front of me. I set up my phone to record everything, just in case she tried to twist the story, and I waited for her to come downstairs. When she finally walked into the kitchen, I was already sitting there with her laptop open, the bank records on the screen, and that suitcase burned into my memory. I asked her straight out, "Who is Brandon? And what are you planning?" For the first time in weeks, I saw real shock on her face. Her mouth opened like she was about to lie, but then she stopped. She sat down slowly, her hands trembling. What she told me next nearly knocked the ground out from under me. Brandon wasn't just some guy she worked with. He was her half-brother. I didn't even know she had a half-brother. Apparently, he'd been estranged from her family for years, and recently, they'd reconnected in secret. The hotel charges? Those weren't romantic rendezvous. They were short meetings with a lawyer to help settle an inheritance dispute he was dealing with. The separate bank account? She'd been quietly helping him get back on his feet without involving me, because she thought I'd disapprove. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or feel like the biggest idiot alive. She explained that the "you'd be a better husband" comment was an offhand joke she made to Brandon about his patience during the company event, not some cruel public attack on me. She thought I'd never taken it seriously, that I'd understood it was just sarcasm. I felt like a balloon with all the air rushing out. I'd built this whole nightmare in my head, convinced myself she was betraying me and I couldn't see what was actually happening. We spent the rest of the day talking, really talking for the first time in months. She cried when she realized how much her secrecy had hurt me, and I cried when I realized how easily I doubted her. We agreed that we needed to rebuild trust, to be more open, no matter how messy the truth is. I deleted all the recordings, the GPS tracker, everything. For the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. So, that's where I am now. I learned a hard lesson. Silence can be just as destructive as lies, and paranoia can ruin you if you let it. But I also learned that sometimes the truth isn't as dark as your mind makes it. What do you guys think? Have you ever jumped to the worst conclusions about someone you love, only to find out the truth was completely different? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to read your own stories, because honestly, this might be the craziest experience I've ever shared here. And if you enjoyed this confession, don't forget you're watching Forsaken Joe. Subscribe for more wild and real-life stories like this one.